what is the role of IT professionals in Islamic banks? I have 3 years of experience in IT industry. Should I first start from the IT perspective while gaining experience in Islamic finance and then switch to the finance side, or should I first start from the IT perspective in an Islamic bank while gaining experience in Islamic finance and then switch to the finance side? Well, I mean, my advice is always to do what you really want to do. So if you really like the IT side, then pursue that. If you really like the finance side, then pursue that. If your background, which you mentioned is 3 years of experience in the IT industry, the execution of an Islamic finance transaction is necessarily different from a conventional transaction. And in the absence of training and well-trained individuals, you need to sort of create systems that are in place that will basically dummy-proof the execution, so that, for instance, somebody doesn't present an invoice and then say, "I'd like to do a Murabaha." So this, that's problematic, obviously, for those of you who know how Murabahas are supposed to be conducted. Now, what's your role in that? Obviously, if you have an IT experience combined with product knowledge in Islamic finance, you're golden. So I would say that once you have both those things, and then you go into an Islamic financial institution fully employed, then you can obviously select what interests you.
Yeah, just to touch upon that question, perhaps from just in terms of my understanding, I'm not entirely clear what Yusuf means when Yusuf says that he's in the IT industry and he's looking to shift in the finance side. Does that mean he wants to shift into Islamic finance while continuing to work in IT, or is that a shift, just a complete shift? Either way, just as a point of information for Yusuf, we share the same name, and we also potentially share the same career paths, because I was initially a technology consultant and now I'm working in a Sharia division. So things can happen, and it's about what Atif said. It's about pursuing what you want to do. And so if you really feel that there's a specific aspect of Islamic finance that you want to do, then you take the means to do it, which would involve getting experience, practical experience, getting qualifications, studying, and so on. Mind you, having said that, as part of my role as a Sharia auditor, I'm often reviewing IT systems because this is an expanding thing. Atif touched upon Murabaha. Many of the Murabaha transactions and transactions in general involve specific sequencing, and systems need to be able to effect this. There's specific terminology, specific, for example, fields that dictate whether a transaction is Sharia compliant or not. And there's much software being developed now that would probably involve IT professionals who have a degree of experience when it comes to Islamic finance. So there are plenty of opportunities within the IT field whereby you could enter into Islamic finance.
The question from Tushar, a very interesting one. Shouldn't lack of experience in conventional banking be a positive sign, as then one could structure true Sharia compliant products which are not replicas of conventional banking products? Does this statement hold true in reality for Islamic finance industry? First, obviously, conventional banking experience is not necessarily an impediment to being able to structure truly Sharia compliant products. But having said that, what you're getting at, I understand, which is that is innocence of conventional banking something useful? Ignorance is sometimes bliss, and not knowing and not having this background of, for instance, interest-based pricing, a good sign, and so that one can look at, for instance, equity-based products in a fresh light rather than something that's colored with riba. And I would say yes, I think that it is certainly a positive sign. We've seen examples in places like Pakistan where a lot of young bankers come straight out of postgraduate diplomas in Islamic finance and go straight into Islamic finance, and they don't have the intellectual baggage that, for instance, a 60-year-old CEO, we've been training people in their 50s and 60s who are upper management who simply don't understand how money can be made in Islamic finance. Whereas there are people who are in their 20s who are fresh into the industry and they're completely positive, and that's obviously a good thing. So I wouldn't say it's necessarily a question of whether one could structure them, But whether it's an attitude thing, and coming from an investment banking background, I'm very comfortable with equity-based products, and I in fact find them to be much more profitable, much more resilient, and much more robust in the absence of a debt-based environment. And I think that's something that could obviously be a big plus sign. What do you think, Yusuf?
Yeah, I thank Tushar actually for raising this question. I think it's a valid question. Perhaps before we go answer other questions, I think this question's probably important to address. And I would say there are various facets to the question, but I mean, Islamic finance is in essence a paradigm shift. It's a completely different way of seeing banking. It's a completely different way of seeing the function of money. And the reality, so the first part of the question is, would there be advantage to someone not necessarily having gone into conventional finance? And the answer is yes, provided they going in believing in having grounded in what Islamic banking is. But the reality, which is perhaps the second part of the question that Tushar raised, is that we don't have enough out there in terms of people understanding how Islamic banking operates or how it's intended to operate. And the way Islamic banking has developed, as opposed to its original theory, is in effect operating very much in a conventional banking paradigm, but ensuring that the models being practiced are in conformity with the Sharia. And in light of just the reality of the situation, conventional banking experience often is of benefit to people entering the industry. Having said that, I myself didn't have any conventional banking experience, and I don't think it's necessary for someone who wants to enter the industry to necessarily undergo conventional banking experience. There are many ways they can enter Islamic banking afresh. What's important is that people who make the transition make it based on, and I would hope so. I mean, there are economic drivers that people often determine people's decisions. But if they actually believe in the paradigm of Islamic banking, how it is different, why it is different, then they make the decision to leave conventional banking based on an actual belief in Islamic banking. That would be of importance.
Okay, Omar Hosseini, I am a legal practitioner with some years of experience, and at present I am in the final stage of my PhD program in dispute resolution with a background in Sharia. I have presented a number of papers on dispute resolution in the Islamic finance industry in some conferences. What are the job prospects for someone like me in the Islamic finance industry? Yusuf, I think you'd be a good person to answer that.
Well, dispute resolution is a huge topic in Islamic finance, simply because of the nature of contract law and the nature of transactions. That most major transactions are usually referenced to the English law, for example, and the Sharia implications of that, in the sense that the contract itself, while being intended to be governed by the rules of the Sharia, is ultimately basically going to be governed by the rules of a country that may not necessarily have the Sharia as at the forefront. So this is a huge topic and has various dimensions, and it's a huge discussion point, which obviously I don't think we have the scope for to cover here. But the fact that you've contributed, and the industry, sorry, I didn't quite. I can't quite see the question. And the conferences that you mentioned, I mean, IDB, Islamic Development Bank, IRT, these are huge bodies, and you've contributed them, shows that you've already got a fair foot in the industry. And being a legal practitioner, I would expect that there would be huge job prospect for someone like yourself. The fact that you've got a practitioner's background, as well as someone who's contributed academically and shows you've got an interest, and you've obviously presented papers in conferences. I would definitely expect you to have a huge background. And once again, I'd say that it's always good to supplement this with product knowledge, and I would say that just by what you've written here, feel free to forward your CV or to Atif, and Atif can obviously liaise with people like myself and other people who would be quite keen to have someone like you on board.